Good evening and welcome. If you are here tonight, 7 p.m., it's Monday night. You are part of the CARES community, where on Mondays we gather together with an expert speaker that shares their professional and sometimes personal experience working in the space of addiction and recovery. So if this is a space that's familiar to you, this space is designed to help individuals who are looking for answers, advice, tools, to be able to walk through life and meet other people too, to build a community in support of the needs of learning. How do we navigate the space when you're dealing with a family member or trying to support a family member in active addiction or in the past? So that is what the CARES community is about. And tonight we have a very special guest, a returning speaker, Gerson Bravo, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist who has extensive experience working in the community in multiple churches, English, Spanish, and Korean churches as well, has dedicated his life to be able to support and serve the community in many spaces with a wealth of experience working also in addiction and recovery. So we're very happy to have him here tonight. And with that said, Gerson, is there anything that, fun fact about you?
Oh, okay. I love movies. Yeah, I do love all genres. Mostly my favorite all-time character, Indiana Jones.
Okay.
Absolutely.
You have
it's
won
not
the
the
crown.
years, it's the mileage.
It's not the years, it's the mileage. That's a good quote. Well, Gerson, when we bring people on board here and we talk to them, we ask them the basic question is, why do family members or why does an individual choose the addiction over their loved one, whether it be their child or family member? I mean, as a therapist, what's your answer to that question?
Well, because my specialization is a marriage and family, I'm always thinking systems. I'm thinking about how certain things will throw off the balance in the family. And so from the moment that the event or the incident occurs, that family member isn't the only one experiencing those consequences. It's everyone in that system, in that body. I think it's interesting how companies call for corporate meetings, which is from the Latin that means body, corporate. And so the body of the family is all affected in its members. If you take it from a biblical perspective, we're talking about every member of the church is the same picture painted for the family, where one member affects the other. So in the end, what happens is that everyone in that system is trying to get back to balance because it's been thrown off. And so there's a constant struggle to get that back to a condition or a stability. And we can get into that a little later about negative feedback loops. But to initiate the conversation, that's where I'm approaching it from.
And it's interesting that you say that everyone is affected, because most of the time in many communities, whether it's churches or families, right? Yeah. People don't talk about what's happening. It's almost as if, no, it's not happening here. So you're saying on one end, everyone is impacted, but people don't talk about it enough. And why don't they?
Well, we don't know how to communicate effectively. One of the practical steps in addressing this issue of addiction, how it impacts the family system, is that we haven't learned to communicate effectively. And we can get into some very specific examples, if you don't mind. I can give you an example.
I love it.
A lot of people talk about tough love, but in reality, what we're really trying to convey is communicating truth with love. And what does that look like? Well, sometimes what happens is we can show love without enabling the addiction. So 2 examples of what that could look like from a healthy perspective and an unhealthy perspective. So the unhealthy would be, if you love me, you would have quit a long time ago. What that does to the person is that it causes them to feel guilty, and in turn could cause them to actually go to the addiction even further. Where in turn, what it would be more helpful and healthier would be to say, hey, if you need food, if you need drink, if you need anything, let's go together. More like an invitation. So we're looking at love as one practical step without enabling the behavior. If you throw money at them, of course, they will pursue the one thing they think brings them relief, which ironically brings more harm.
So you have love without enabling.
Yeah.
So you're not detached,
Yeah.
but you are engaged. You want to help, but you're not doing it in a way that's going to keep the cycle of addiction going.
Yeah, that's the
And
idea.
it's so tricky for people to know that balance.
Yeah.
Where do people, I don't want to say go wrong, but people want to do well.
Yeah.
They do want to show that with love.
Yeah.
But what happens when the family member is not responding to that love? What's going on there?
Well, we have to also understand what is addiction. Addiction, sometimes one of the issues is if we approach our understanding of addiction as it's a choice. They choose to do this, so they can choose to get out of it. What would be more helpful is to think of it more like an illness, where they feel trapped in that condition. They don't know the way out. It's no different than any illness where you need help. They don't know where to look, and they'll just turn to the one thing they know that can give them relief. And if we think of it in that way, we can be more loving and caring in a way that is necessary to treat a sick person in that sense, in that context, rather than, you choose to do this instead of loving me. And so that, again, going back to the picture of guilt and causing that person to turn to the one thing, ironically, that you're trying to get them away from. Yeah.
And I hear of people, and I've heard this phrase, and I think when we were talking earlier, you were talking about, on one end, you see people that you want to use love without enabling, but you also want to use love without weaponizing it. Mm-hmm. And can you tell me a little bit about what you meant when you said that, weaponizing love?
Yeah, so again, to the example of, if you love me, you would have quit, right? So you're using it as this weapon of making that person feel like they're under that pressure, right? And in turn, what it does, it makes them want to double down into what they're doing that you don't want them to do. So basically, that's what it is. And from your own perspective, you may not intend it to be that way, because again, homeostasis is a desire to bring everything back into balance. Like anything, right? We use the idea of homeostasis for the body. I think the normal temperature of the body is about 78 degrees. So if you get too cold, the body begins to shiver because it's trying to bring you down to that warmth that you need. If you get too hot, right? Again, it's trying to bring you to that temperature that you need by sweating, so cooling you off. So all of this is to say that the same thing that happens to the body in a physical sense happens to a family, which is the picture of another body. And so everyone's trying their best. For example, from a more psychological perspective, anxiety. If the person that is addicted goes into this panicky state where they need the hit of whatever they're craving in their illness, then what happens is that when the person is seeking that, they show these signs, right? At work, anywhere. It impacts all areas of their life, not just relationships at home. And everyone feels that anxiety. And what do we do to try to bring the family back from a panicky state to calmness? Is that we seek activities, we seek action and engagement that brings us to calm, right? One of the things my wife tells me, we're raising teenagers. I have an 18-year-old and a 15-year-old at home. And I get passionate about the truth. And sometimes, even though I don't intend it to be that way, it doesn't always land. And so my wife has told me, she does therapy to me too. And she tells me, Gerson, stop reacting, right? Because I want to react to the thing that they're saying. I think it's unhealthy. It's not helpful. Don't say that. Don't do that. And this is what we're doing also with our family members who are addicted. We don't want them to act or talk a certain way, and we wish they would behave differently. And sometimes not giving an emotional reaction is best for that situation. Kind of brings to mind the picture of Jesus when he was mocked and he was put in a situation where he was pressured to say something. and he chose silence. And I think we can take a page out of that and apply it to ourselves and use that kind of wisdom and knowing when to react to certain, we use this word a lot, choosing your battles, right? It's just another way of saying the same thing. But again, we want to react because it's this desire to bring the balance back, right? Bring everything to stability. And that's basically what's the underlying desire.
You mentioned illness and
Yeah.
viewing it as an illness, not something that's just lack of willpower or
Yeah.
commitment on their part.
Yeah.
The struggle there, having empathy
Yeah.
there. And when I think of illness, I also think of like sometimes when you use the example of homeostasis, the balance, the body trying to find that perfect balance. But sometimes, would you agree that with an illness, the balance isn't there?
Yeah.
And so
Thrown
there's
off.
medication or there's something there that tries to balance it. The child that has a fever and
Yeah.
is given a medication to reduce that fever. So what if the balance or the homeostasis that the family's coming to isn't healthy to begin with?
Yeah.
Do you ever see scenarios like that in your work?
Yeah, well, obviously, when we're dealing with addiction, that's just one layer of many layers. Like sometimes it's not only that we don't know how to respond to addiction, but we also don't know how to do marriage. We don't know how to do relationships. So when we got into the business of creating a family, we didn't think of it. Often, I would say, sometimes we have to take a page out of parenting to understand marriage and how that contextualizes with addiction. And what I'm trying to speak into about this is the following. Usually when we have a child, we enjoy every stage of their life. We enjoy a child stage when they're, just a few months old to 5 years old to 10 years old. And so as we move through the stages of life, we appreciate those things and we cherish them and we're present, we're available as parents, right? If we could take a page out of that and apply it to other relationships like marriage, right? And you could look at every stage of your marriage. You were in your 20s, right? You were in your 30s, and you're appreciating every version of that person. And you're adjusting to the changes that you're seeing in that person, just like you would with your own child. You're adjusting to all the changes. Right now, I'm adjusting to teenage life. I was once a teenager, but it's different when you're on the other side of that, right? I've often had that happen in my work as a psychotherapist, is that I'll hear of abuse, I'll hear of kidnapping, I'll hear of, all kinds of trauma, but when it's happening in your own family, it hits different. It lands different. And it's one of the most helpless and hopeless feelings that you have as a parent, as a brother, a sister. And I want to see if this segues into something more philosophical, but I want to keep things practical. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to take it wherever you want to go. So when you talk about the fears that people have, I mean, so much of people that walk into a space like counseling or therapy or even communities, they'll go in there and say, help my spouse, help my son, help my daughter. And here you're painting a picture about a system, about the family, that it's not just one person that's dealing with anxiety. It's an entire family that's struggling with that anxiety. What would you say to someone who maybe this is the first time that they're recognizing that what I'm feeling right now is the same exact thing that my kid or my spouse is feeling, but they've never had the opportunity to take care of themselves because they're focused on that one person?
Yeah, so how I take care of myself in dealing with difficult behaviors, even if you're not dealing with addiction, just difficult behaviors from day-to-day life with children, with your family members, is that you save yourself a lot of, emotional pain by knowing when, again, goes back to the idea of response. Even though the addiction itself is an illness in this presentation that we're talking about and sharing today, if you zoom out, right, give yourself a bigger lens, everyone in that family does have a choice, though, and how they choose to respond to the behaviors and the emotions that are running through high in the family. So knowing to keep kind of like a neutral stance when you need to use that. And the trick is knowing when, right? And sometimes it takes a little bit of practice to know yourself how much you can take. There's a limit as to how much you can take. So this gets very nuanced because everyone has a different limit as how much they can take and they can handle. So when you notice that limit is right there, you're right at the border, it's kind of like the perfect temperature, right? At what temperatures does water boil? At 100 degrees, right? So knowing exactly you're at 99 point, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're knowing you're getting there, you got to step back,
Okay.
right? And you got to say, okay, I got to breathe. Don't respond, don't react, but keep watch, close watch, right? It's kind of like back in the day when my kids, well, I still have small ones in my house. If they throw a tantrum in the Target or in the Walmart store, I will watch them, even though I know that I can't really get into it. We're not home. But what I'll do is I'll try and distance myself a little bit. So, because I know my son will notice when I distance myself a little bit and they'll stop crying. If I get too close, the attention is there. They cry, they yell, they want something, and then you walk away a little bit, but you're still monitoring. So this is an idea that we can apply with adults as well. We can still stay at a safe distance, not just for the person dealing with addiction, but for yourself. Because you do also need self-care for yourself.
Okay. I'm going to throw a wrench into this because you're the professional,
Go
so I'm going to give you a hard one here. What happens when you have two family members and one says, oh, we need to distance ourselves, we need to give space, and the other one says, you're not giving enough time and attention to this. That's why we're having that. And you have this conflict of how we reach that homeostasis.
Yeah.
Sorry to throw that one at you, but
No
how do you handle
worries.
that?
Another practical step is to seek family therapy. Because sometimes when there is a gridlock, kind of like when you're stuck on the I-35 and there's a gridlock, you know, there's no movement. No one's budging. That's what happens in marriage too. When there's no agreement, there's no action, right? Until there is agreement, things can move forward. Movement is life. Speaking of my love for movies, I was watching, can I get into it?
Yes.
All right. I was watching this movie about the end of the world, and the main character said, movement is life. And I thought that was interesting that he said that. I'm like, for the movie, it works, because if you want to survive, you want to move. Keep moving, right? And I thought to myself, from a mental health perspective, how does that apply? Well, if you think about it, addiction, depression, you know, things like this will cause you to isolate, especially during the holidays. Especially during the holidays. You don't want to engage. Right now, I'm working at a pain management clinic. And there, we're dealing with a lot of depression, a lot of pain, a lot of layered problems with family and pain, emotional and physical. So isolation is a big no-no. We need things to keep moving, especially when the body is in pain. I remember from our last conversation, I spoke about we're really well trained on how to deal with physical injuries, but we don't know how to deal with emotional injuries. So the same thing applies to the emotional as it does to the physical, and vice versa, is that we need to take that injury and treat it with gentleness, right? And if you're at a point where you're at gridlock, going back to the idea of family members are not agreeing, seek help outside of the family system to a neutral party that can come in with their expertise and help you a little bit with that. And if you need pastoral support as well, bring in that other perspective. Perspectives are huge. I can't really quote where I read this in the scriptures because it doesn't come to mind, and I don't like it. When I was serving in my time at church, I used to have these verses right at hand. But I remember a story, I'm going to kind of say it in broad terms, of a king who was very afraid of his enemy coming at him. And the man of God cried to God and said, open the eyes of this king and show him that you are with Israel. And so the king opened his eyes, he saw a different perspective and saw the armies, the angels surrounding the camp of the enemy, and it blew him away. He didn't realize God's perspective. So perspective is big also in psychotherapy and family therapy. A therapist will walk into the room, into that space, and may offer a perspective that neither party can see at that moment because of the emotions. Yeah, so.
the beauty of being able to branch out,
Yeah.
to be able to have that neutral party, someone that can see the dynamics as they're playing out and can actually call to attention or bring in people or offer suggestions or recommendations. Now, there's many of these communities that exist, right? And the CARES community is one of those communities that's being built to offer that space. What advice would you give to this program if our goal is to build a network, a community for the family members, for the caregivers? What do we need to do to be able to help people break through that gridlock?
One of them, like I said, is seek help outside of that system, right, to gain a new perspective. Another one is to always, remember we went, at the beginning we talked about effective communication. We can learn those tools in therapy. But another one would be is always speak hope and encouragement in the way you speak from day to day. You know, it's kind of like the idea of don't bring me my flowers until I'm dead, right? Bring your flowers now, right? And you say to that person, even if you see them depressed and addicted in their chains and their illness, you know, we love you here. We're here for you. And if you need anything, just call. You know, come to me and I'll help you, right? But it's that idea of love without enabling, right? Just don't throw money at the problem. Throwing money at the problem doesn't always lead to good outcomes. You know, we do need money to support these programs. We do. Yeah. We need money to function in the world, but we just can't throw money at all of the problems. We just, you know, I remember one time, another one of my favorite things is sports. I love sports. And another thing that I learned from listening to coaches and things like that was one coach said, your best ability is your availability. And I was like, wow, okay. Because he had certain players that didn't want to show up to practice. So it's like the best ability. You want me to call your name during the game? You know, be present, be available. You know, that's your best ability. So sometimes it's not the words you use, it's just being available that makes all the difference. So, you know, sometimes we don't have all the tools. I mean, we don't come into marriage knowing what to do. We learn along the way. Parenting is, we talk about it all the time, but until it happens, you start learning on the fly sometimes, you know. And then the other thing about more grim things like death, my dad passed away 5 years ago. I always knew that my dad was going to pass away. I even had dreams of him passing away. And I would wake up with tears, and it felt real. And I'm like, wow. And I went to check on my dad, would call him, are you okay? And then when it finally happened, it still hit me like a train. And I still miss him to this day. So no matter how much preparation you go into with this, life teaches us, you know? So again, I want to reemphasize one more thing. I didn't fully flesh it out. The idea of that movement is life. I want to show an example of a study. I mentioned a study last time. I want to mention a study this time. There was a study that was done with a type of bird that's called the common swift. If everyone wants to Google that and look it up, just to confirm that I'm saying things accurately, they studied this bird because they thought there was something peculiar about this bird. And the thing that was strange is that when they were observed, scientists were like, where do these birds hang out? You know? So they decided to track one of them. And they come to find out that this bird, it lives in the air 10 months out of the year, doesn't set foot on the ground at all. It eats in the air, and this one is the one that shocks me the most. It sleeps in the air.
This is why you had us fact-checked it, right?
And so I was like curious, okay, well, how does it do that? Well, it goes up to the highest parts of the sky above the clouds where the wind is strong enough, and it glides. And then it goes into autopilot. Incredible. I mean, I thought that was shocking to me because normally when you think of animals or creatures that never stop moving, you think automatically fish, right? Who hasn't heard that sharks, there you go, who hasn't heard that sharks need to keep moving or else their hearts will explode? Because if they fall to a certain level or depth, the pressure will be too great for them, right? And then there's fish that never see the air up. They stay really, really low, right? So movement is life in a very literal sense. And these birds, the common swift, will only come down to either mate or have babies.
Wow. Wow.
And the reason for that is the lower body is very weak. Their talons are very weak, so they cannot stay on the ground for too long, or they become easy prey. So again, in a literal and figurative sense, movement is life. And I love how you're doing this with this program. You're mobilizing, you're bringing life to all corners and all families. And I think that that's important for this platform to happen so that we can have movement.
Thank you. There's a really strong belief that CARES program is about building community.
Yeah.
And we provide spaces like this where we learn something new.
Yeah.
We walk away with tools that are practical that we can incorporate. And then we learn how to take care of ourselves while also knowing how do we engage with family members. And you mentioned the holidays.
Yeah.
So, Christmas is around the corner. There's a lot of joy, but there's also the many stories of people who are very saddened because
Yeah.
they are missing a loved one, or there's some rift or conflict, or addiction is still very much at the forefront. What do you tell to the family member that still feels that pain and that wound?
Yeah. Well, don't be alone. Don't be alone during this time. Try to surround yourself with something or someone that will help fill that. Because one of that void, right? Because the thing about addiction is that it hijacks the brain, big time. And because we're talking about family systems, I would even say it hijacks the family system as well. Because what it does is that it teaches the brain that the only way to get dopamine levels high enough to feel satisfied or pleasure is to take the drug. And this is one of the things that we're dealing with at the pain management clinic. We're looking at it from a transdisciplinary team where medical doctors, chiropractors, mental health specialists are working together as a team to help the patient. But the problem that we're encountering is that the patient often just wants the drug. I just want the drug. I don't see the reason why I'm here talking to you. I don't understand the connection between mental health and my pain. And so it just blinds them completely. Again, non-judgment, love and grace, approaching them for what it is, not that they have a choice in it anymore. Because at some point, yes, you could argue that at some point choices were made. That's neither here nor there. It's obvious that choices led up to this point. But this is why it's so important, going back to the idea of family system. Usually one of the signs that leads to substance abuse is the state of the family. And if the family's in disarray, a lot of people will even look at cultural, one of the things that we as therapists must have is cultural sensitivity. We have to be sensitive to cultural trends and changes. And sometimes as a family, I think American culture specifically, it's good and you can argue not good in that we champion individualism as a society, American society. And for better or for worse, we embrace it. The problem is that the rest of the world embraces family, community, and their identity is wrapped in that family, not the individual. And so because we the child gets to a certain age, 18, we want them out, right? And they're not even ready, especially with today's inflation and cost of living. They're nowhere close to being out there by themselves. And then they go to addiction, it's even worse. It compounds the problem. So a lot of the issues has to do with cultural, social, psychological state of the thinking in the family, the beliefs in the family that do not help the situation. And in some cases, creates the problem, creates the conditions and the environment for addiction to happen.
So what advice would you give to the family? And this will be my last question, and
Yeah.
we'll open it up to the audience for any questions here. We'll have a microphone going around here, or if you have a question, we'll bring that here forward. But what do you say to the family that says, well, I'm trying my best to prepare my child for a world that is challenging, it is difficult, make good choices on one end, and on the other end, too, letting them know that you need to ask for help when you're not sure what the right answer is, or you're not sure if this is the right person to trust or the right action. And so this whole balance between being able to make decisions independently, but also be able to be part of a community. And the families that struggle with knowing, did I make the right choice? Am I actually making the right choice right now with the decisions around the dinner table or around Christmas and the holidays?
Yeah.
What do you say to families who are in that struggle of?
I mean, in the 1950s, on a mailman salary, you could own a house. But today, you need 2, 3 incomes from one individual. And it's a different reality. So the first thing is to understand the realities of substance abuse, that you have to deal with someone that is dealing with a different type of environment financially, economically. So what we can do is maybe, and for most families, this is the reality, my suggestion would be to do, it doesn't have to be either or. It doesn't have to be you keep them there all your life or you kick them out. No, no, no. It can be a sort of like a incremental, gradual transition where you can say something like this. You could say, you're always going to have a roof over your head and a place to sleep, but you got to put in the work. Get a job, go to school. As long as you're doing something and you're working on your goals, you're going to have a place to eat and sleep. I know how tough it is out there. You know, you will always have a place as long as you're showing effort. You know, obviously we don't want our children to be lazy. We don't want them to be unproductive. So we're trying to incentivize them and to move forward and understand. But I'll be honest, even if you say those words, that doesn't always land. And the child will always rebel and say, no, I want my way, right? And what do you do at that point? Well, you gotta let them learn on their own. I mean, it paints the picture of the prodigal son, doesn't it? So at the end of the day, it isn't a formula answer. It's more of a case-by-case answer. There are some broad strokes, like I was saying, you know, the idea of equilibrium and wanting, you know, everything to be more stable, and that's the effort that we're trying to do here. But within those systems, there's a lot of moving parts, a lot of dynamics that can be kind of like broken down into individual situations, and we go from there.
Well, Gerson, you've shared a lot of information here.
Yeah.
And the beauty of how this is set up is that we'll have a video that can be accessed at any time. So individuals who want to replay this, or for anyone online, if this is something that you feel, I've been talking about this, or I didn't have the right words, but I heard something here that really resonated with me, or I think it could be valuable or helpful for someone that I know, feel free to share this. I mean, this is the hope of having this type of space. But you talked about movement is life. You talked about how treating the family, that how addiction just really crosses over in terms of the system and how everyone needs. You've advocated for family therapy, for the community to be able to be present, to not be alone during difficult times, and many, many more things. And a few more that I think are going to come up. So we're actually going to open up the space here for questions in the crowd. So if you have a question, please raise your hand. We'll have a microphone going around here, and you have an expert here to answer that question for you.
So thank you very much for being here tonight. Question, what would be your opinion? I had a spouse, not this lovely lady, but in a previous life, that actually she drank until she died, and that was after we were apart. But during the moment, to your point about drawing lines and perimeters, movement of life, I think you're dead money on. But sometimes movement of life, what I saw is part of the addiction. She wanted me to engage, and I mean, it felt like part of the alcohol to her was the fight.
Yeah.
And once they suck you in, you're gone.
Yeah.
That, you know, the day's gone, the evening's gone, the night's gone. And once I figured out, no. I'm drawing a line right here, and that person got madder in the moment. But what would be your comments about that part of the dance or the fight, or what you're trying to do with this person is part of the addiction, it felt like to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's tough because it kind of, what I was thinking while you were speaking was like, it gets to a boiling point where you're feeling the temperature go up, the tension, right? And you know that the ultimate conclusion is that things continue to escalate until they become physical, you know? So knowing yourself, having self-awareness is a big tool. Having self-awareness. How do you create self-awareness? Conversation. If you keep a conversation going, you'll remember. The more you talk about it, the more you say it, the more it becomes at the front of your mind, important. Like if I'm constantly talking about, I'll give an example for the audience that is based in faith. If you're thinking about prayer, it's more likely that if you're talking about prayer, you're always connecting with people that pray, you're gonna end up praying regularly. So noticing that, having self-awareness, where's the boundary line? Where you feel like you're sensing, you're getting to a point, your body's giving you signals. You're feeling physically sick. You're like, I'm about to throw up. I can't even open my mouth. I remember one instant, just to exemplify where maybe helpful in some sense, I was having a conversation with my mom and my brother we were talking about a property issue. And I wanted to throw up because we had this conversation about this property issue so many times, and we couldn't agree that I was like, guys, I'm getting nauseous. I don't want, the stress level was so high in me that I just wanted to shut it down. I'm like, I can't even breathe. This conversation is not helping, and I'm not even helping in any way. So I walked away from it, created distance. So you know yourself better than anyone. You are the expert of you. So if you know that you can only push it so far and you're feeling like the temperature is now 97 or 98, 99.9, stop yourself before it leads to destruction. So that would be one way to exemplify or paint the picture of what it looks like. Yeah.
Got another question? We got two more.
So you briefly mentioned that people with addiction and depression tend to isolate themselves from maybe like activities or being around family. What's something that we can do to support those people practically? Like, is persistence key, or like how do we navigate that situation?
Yeah. Beautiful question. I love that because you're really bringing out something that everyone can relate to. So I'm thinking one example that I've seen work, I've seen this work, is that if you can have at least one family member or one friend who you can share, if you're dealing with addiction, someone you can share with, right? And vice versa, if you are the one experiencing vicarious addiction secondhand, so what you're looking at is, I want to check in with my friend. I want to see how they're doing. I want to check in with my sister, right? I've had cases in general, this has happened repeatedly, where a person is so depressed they won't even bathe at all. But because their sister or sibling checks in on them with a phone call, a knock on the door, hey, I love you, have you bathed? That in itself causes a positive type of pressure to get that person moving and doing something. So I think that's important to acknowledge the power of that. The external, what I was trying to say is called external accountability. Keeping someone in check, but in a loving, caring way, not in a way of like, if you love me, take a bath. No, don't say it that way. More like, I'm here for you. What do you need? I'm worried for you. I'm here.
So the CARES program and its uniqueness, dealing with the families, right, and the caregivers of those suffering with addiction. You mentioned equilibrium and maybe even, in my experience, balance. Is that what we're aiming at? What would be some disciplines that you might suggest for those that are trying to care that can help create that equilibrium for them? What kind of practical disciplines can they put in place so that way they don't get sucked too far in or they stay too far withdrawn?
Oh man, that's a good one because there's so many angles to kind of answer this, but I got to give one. So what we're talking about with homeostasis is something called negative feedback loop. And the negative feedback loop is a desire to bring everything back into a condition of normality of like, okay, this is the right temperature, this is sustainable, right? Not too cold, not too hot. So what that looks in a practical sense is that a person does something as simple as taking the coat off their back and offering it, right? In a literal and simple sense, right? Figurative sense. It's like, hey, I give you my coat and I got an extra one if you want one, right? And if that's how far you can go with your contribution, then that's love, you know? So it doesn't always have to be an actual tangible item, which matters, by the way, because you can't get someone's attention if they're not well fed and well dressed. You know, if they're thirsty, they got to drink first before they listen to any word that comes out of your mouth. Any love that you're wanting to show has to come in the form of basic needs being met. And those basic needs, I tell my kids all the time, you will always have your basic needs met. Basic. Now, if you want Chick-fil-A, Cane's, or now in Texas, Lanes, that's extra, right? That's extra. But if you want food, there's always going to be in the refrigerator. There's always going to be a shower for you. You know, this is my way of supporting and helping, not enabling addiction, but offering you the basic needs, showing you real love, you know? And I know that sometimes teenagers, if they're dealing with addiction, whether that's drugs or whatever it might be, teenagers with or without addiction can be really rude and mean and call you all sorts of names. But at the end of the day, they know when it comes down to it, you are reliable by your actions, right? And you're showing your love not by giving money necessarily, but by offering the coat on your back, you know? This is my contribution, right? And so in a practical sense, it looks different for everybody. What is it that you can give in your capacity? And not get too involved or sucked in, because I know what that feels like. I've been in the therapy room where a person shares trauma with me, and I've had them, and I've been warned about this. Careful, self-care, and I've taken that weight with me home. And I think pastors experience some of that too, where you feel the weight of that trauma that that person is sharing with you, and it weighs on you, and you bring it home with you. So that's when you you cross that line where you're like, gotta be careful, like how much invested you are emotionally, and try to keep yourself like, I am me, you are you, you know, and then create that safety for yourself so that it doesn't roll over onto you.
So, Gerson, going with that question,
Yeah.
I think about the pastors, the ministers, the counselors, the therapists that have to
Yeah.
have that natural boundary
Yeah.
so they can go home to their families. The parents that this is my child, this is my home, and
I'm
there's almost this
invested.
exactly.
I'm invested.
So I'm invested
Yeah.
into this. So I think to that question, then for the family member, how do you communicate that need for a boundary, that importance for a boundary or self-care when there is no 5 o'clock end to being a parent or being a spouse? This is a 24/7 type of a job, and the pain that you feel at seeing your loved one suffer doesn't end either very quickly. So what do they do to remind themselves, or how do they manage that?
Yeah, I mean, you do definitely need to define that line, even if it's your own child. I mean, we do it all the time, right? There's a moment where my daughter had to stop at a certain age. I thought it was inappropriate for her to keep coming to, you know how kids are when they're little, that you put them in their bed and then they come back to your room and they want to sleep with you. But at some point, my daughter got so developed that I was like, this is not, we're not doing this. And we set a boundary. And it broke my heart. It broke my wife's heart. Oh, poor baby, she just wants to. I'm like, no, it's just that there has to be a natural boundary of respect because she's a young lady now. So we do this all the time. So with addiction, the same can apply, that you can still, you know, set limits that are for safety, right? If you have a cutter, what are you going to do? You're going to look for all the blades in the house and lock them up. You can't just leave razor blades laying around everywhere in your tubs and in your bathrooms and just hope that they won't cut themselves. You have to physically change the conditions of your house to house a child or a person that's dealing with multiple issues, not just addiction.
And I want to ask one last question here, but if there's someone in the crowd that has one last question, hasn't asked it, if they've had their hand up, we got a microphone there. Yes.
So I'm just kind of curious why the holidays are often so hard for people in addiction, because it seems like it's always something that flares up at the holidays. And then beyond that is kind of really, what advice would you give for families to find, to be able to get joy anchored back in to the holiday season when, they sometimes build a history of just dealing with crisis?
Yeah. I know that even if it wasn't for addiction, sometimes we as family members, we drift apart. It's just like a natural thing that happens in our culture where we all start forming families and we all start emotionally distancing ourselves, not because we're looking deliberately to disconnect, but it's just life, work, things that happen. So what can help bring you back to some kind of connection with, friends, family that are dealing with these things is, I'll give you an example of my father. Before he passed away, he had that one thing that he loved doing with me was to play chess. We just loved playing chess. And it was like this little tradition. Whenever he saw me walk through that door, the first chance he got, he was like, I challenge you. I'm like, oh, okay, I guess we're doing this again. And I was already a grown man with kids, and he was still challenging me. And the reason now I understand it now that I'm looking in retrospect. It was like, you may be busy, you may be doing your own thing, which I respect, but you're always going to be my son. And that was powerful for me. So if you can create traditions rituals, I guess, for lack of a better word, rituals, that you can help with the connection with that family member. This works with anyone, not just the person dealing with the addiction, anyone. You create a ritual in marriage, right? You have that common song that you both love. And every time you play that song, it's a connection there you feel. You can do that with children. You find something, and you could be deliberate and intentional. The 7-year-old doesn't know that you're being intentional, but you as a parent, you're saying, I'm going to create this intentional tradition and ritual because I want that to be the connection. I think mothers do this better than men, I think, in some sense. Because I'd like to say, credit to the women, that there is an emotional intelligence that women have as a gift from God. And so they can see that connection emotionally and say, oh, I got to keep that going, right? And whatever that looks like for your son or your daughter, find something that speaks to them like, this is our thing. This is what we're going to do. So if one day they do get lost in addiction, hopefully not, but if they make the poor choice of doing something that is harmful to themselves, you can maybe still have that connection where, hey, son, daughter, come, join me here. And it brings a memory back to, oh, this is a time when I wasn't addicted. This was a time when I wasn't harming myself. And this is a time when you and I were just mom and son and daughter and dad. So anyways, that's my suggestion for the season.
Beautiful. Well, I want to, as we wrap up here in this space here, and we may be ending here, but it's still going to be a space here for questions. So if you're here in the space, I encourage you to reach out, check in with Gerson if you have additional thoughts to share here. On a personal note, I'm very touched. Gerson, I've known you for 30 years, and I know your father. And I think last time when we met here on this stage, I told you that there were certain points where I absolutely saw your father. And I love that you mentioned about chess, because your father taught me how to play chess, and he taught many people in our church how to play chess. And I thought about my daughter playing chess as well. And so the idea of how these beautiful traditions have an impact across an entire community is something very powerful. And what you shared earlier about us loving every version of a person, that we grow with them, and we also change, and we adapt, and we keep moving.
That's right.
We keep moving.
I was going to say, one more story real quick. I learned this only after, when we were at the funeral. A young man who was a football player came up to the stage. He was a police officer at that moment. He was football, and then he became a police officer. And he was standing on the stage. I hadn't seen him in years, and he told a story of my dad. And he says, when I was playing football in high school, my dad wasn't there for me in my teenage years. And Oscar, my dad, showed up to my football game. And he read a whole letter saying how much that impacted him, just for my dad to show up to his football game. He was in tears as a grown man, police officer. And I'm like, wow, if we just do a simple gesture like that, just show up, it means the world to some people. So, Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas. Well, on that amazing and wonderful note, I want to thank you all, for those who are online watching us, for those who are here in person. This is the CARES program. We're here in Lakeway, and we're very grateful to the team here at Cornerstone Church here in Austin, Texas, here at Lakeway. CCATX, I encourage you, find them online. It's a beautiful community that has embraced and opened up doors. This is also a partnership with the University of Texas in Austin School of Social Work. And the idea is, can we create things that are meaningful and impactful in the community, that serve a purpose, that provide healing? Can we partner up? Can we bring the best minds in terms of research? Can we create something that helps solve the practical problems that are happening? And what you're seeing here tonight is part of those solutions that are being created. So we encourage you to continue to support that, to be a part of us. Join us in person, find us online. We'd love to hear from you. And just know that if this is your very first time seeing us or coming into this space, simple message: welcome home. Thank you for joining us. Keep in touch, because we will be coming back to this in January as well. So stay up to date with all of our online notifications and all the stuff that the cool people on YouTube say and social medias of like and ring a bell and subscribe and forward, fax, photocopy, Pony Express. I don't know. Share the message. This is really powerful stuff. Thank you, Gerson, and thank you all for being here tonight.